and welcome to Thinking is Free, proudly brought to you by Chinmaya Mission New Zealand.
Howdy everyone, and welcome back. We have a very special guest with us today on the podcast. I would like to welcome Swamini Amritananda Saraswati.
Howdy Om, everyone.
For those that don't know Amma, she heads the Nelson Ashram here in New Zealand, and she's been up here for the week.
Yes.
And I was speaking to Ishanji and thought it'd be a great opportunity to have you come onto the podcast and just have you here to speak. So thank you very much for making some time in your busy schedule, and we're very grateful to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
So the reason why I wanted to get you on was to just to hear about your journey, about how you heard about the mission, how you've heard about the Gurudev's teachings and the knowledge, and how that has taken you on your journey. It's quite obvious you're not Indian.
Yes.
And to
there's a part of me that is very much Indian, though.
Right.
Mm?
Mm-hmm.
So I can't really say I'm not Indian.
Right.
There is, I'm rooted, I feel, in the Hindu culture. So
cool. And that's what I want to hear and to learn about, is that it's not just, and everything we learn about in the mission is that, we're not just the body.
Yeah.
There's so much more to us within. And
that was also Gurudev's, just the way he worked in those days. It was so universal.
Right.
Of course, he wanted to uplift the Hindu culture, but he spread it all over the world. So,
that's right.
By his grace, I just went to listen to him and never look back.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
So who were you before when you joined the mission and heard about Gurudev and his teachings, and what was life like then?
I grew up in Remuera, St. Heliers. I was brought up quite a staunch Catholic. My mother had a deep faith.
Right.
She married my dad, who was Australian, but he was an atheist. He'd rather take the path of thinking himself rather than being in some kind of religion. Mm-hmm. But the thing that if my mother married him, she's told him, I want my children to be brought up as Catholics.
Right.
And he said, that's all good, that's fine, just don't get me involved.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I had a happy childhood. I had two elder brothers.
Yep.
And my mum and dad, and we had a nice house, a small boat that we used to go out to the Waitemata Harbour, and I went to a Catholic girls' college, Barradine, and when I was 10 years old, suddenly my dad had a heart attack.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And, he dropped his body.
Wow.
So because of my Catholic upbringing, and my dad was a good man, he did good karma.
Yep.
He served the community, he was kind, and he was loving, and he was a great dad. Mm-hmm. But it just got me thinking, where's he gone now?
Yeah.
Means that he hasn't gone to heaven because he's not Catholic. Only if you're Catholic.
That's right, yeah.
In those days, you can enter into heaven.
Yeah.
Otherwise you have to go somewhere else. And I thought, that's just not right. It's not fair.
Mm-hmm.
So I just started thinking about the Catholic Church and about, my dad is no longer there, he can't see, hear or touch anything. All his senses are gone because I had a glimpse of him also.
Right.
So it was just nothing there in that body.
Mm-hmm.
So it just made me think, well, where has that vibrant spirit gone?
That's right.
And suddenly it came to me that the woman up the road was about 8 months pregnant. For some reason I thought, wow, that could be my dad. And the dog next door was having puppies, due to have puppies. And then I thought, wow, that could be my dad too. And so these sort of crazy thoughts were coming through my head and thinking,
at 10 years old.
Yes, because, in reincarnation, I'd never heard of and it was never spoken about in the church. Basically, you had one life. That was it. Right. So, it got me thinking. It got me thinking about what is life and what is death. Because I think when you're a child and you lose something that is very close to you, for a time it makes you go into a space within yourself that can touch upon something deeply spiritual. It may not last long, but it gives you kind of an experience of, even so the understanding is not there completely, but it touches something within you, and it's something that it touches you. You can't express or ask anybody else about it because you kind of can't put it into words.
Mm-hmm.
So it's something that I kept to myself.
Wow.
But because the rest of the family was also grieving and, we had a business and all sorts of things had to be organised. And but yes, it did shut me into another place where I started to question about life, death. And I used to look out from my bedroom window and think, we lived in a street that had nice houses. Everyone had a car.
Yep.
A couple of people may have had a boat and things like that. And they had children and everything. And I was thinking, well, is this all that life is about? You buy a house, you get married, you have some children, and then you have a car and depending on your finances, maybe a boat or something. But is this all life is about?
Yeah.
And so that's when I basically started questioning and inquiring.
Right.
Although there was absolutely no one around that I could express myself or my thoughts like this, because there were priests there, but they would think I was a bit of a nutter asking if my father was, the baby up the road or something like that. They'd think I was really off the planet. So, and then I went through teenage years, and of course that didn't really stick with me for so long, but I wasn't so comfortable in how things were going. I wanted to do something for the community, so I took up nursing and then community nursing.
Yep.
And so I did that. And still, as you're teenagers, often you're unsatisfied. So then again, the questioning started again. And there was an Indian man who came and taught yoga at the town hall in Auckland.
Oh, right.
And I went to one of his sessions.
Yep.
This is going back, probably 40 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I really enjoyed that. It just, triggered something again off in me about yoga. And I wanted to move more deeply into what yoga was.
Mm.
And just a short time after that, I was walking down Queen Street and there used to be a Whitcool store.
Right.
And in the front window there was a book called Autobiography of a Yogi. And I looked, he had this beautiful, the cover had his beautiful face on the cover. And actually his face looked very much like Jesus, so that kind of resonated with me. So I went in and I bought the book and I read the book from front to back.
Right.
And that was just full of tremendous ideas that really jolted me into changing my lifestyle.
Yeah.
After I'd read that book, I'm going to India.
Oh, wow.
I'm going to India. That is it.
You decided.
Going to India to search for a guru.
Wow.
So I moved to Melbourne. I lived with my granddad and saved up the money.
Yeah.
And made my first trip to India when I was 19, 20.
Oh, my
maybe.
gosh.
Yeah.
That's quite a courageous step.
It was. But when you're that age and you want to do something and you just have that.
Got the drive and the will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was that book that really pushed me into doing that. And, of course, my family was, you're crazy. Why would you want to go to India? They won't understand what you're saying. It's so far away. And so anyway, I went, and the night before I left, Indira Gandhi had been assassinated.
Wow.
So in Delhi was burning.
That's
it was
right.
on fire.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we saw pictures of this on the TV, and my grandfather said, "You're not going, you can't go in that state. You're just dropping yourself in a war zone."
Mm-hmm.
I'll be okay. Anyway.
The faith was strong.
Yeah. Nothing would stop me.
Yeah.
Nothing would stop me. I was just going no matter what.
Yeah.
So the backpack was all ready and, off I went. So I did go and I landed in Delhi at midnight. And yes, it was on fire. That was, I went, didn't know anybody, didn't know where I was going.
How did you communicate with people? What was it like, when you first arrived out of the airport, and how did you kind of get your bearings?
It was okay because actually a lot of people did speak English there.
Right.
The British had been there and a lot of people actually did speak English, so it was okay.
Yep.
And I got the train up through the Punjab, the last train.
Yeah.
And, I was heading for Sidibari.
Okay. And did you know that that's where you were going? And
yeah, I knew I was going to Sidibari that time.
Right.
Because somebody had presented me with the Holy Gita.
Okay.
An Indian doctor who I used to do service for in a village because this is the second time I'm going to India.
Oh, right.
So the first time I went up to India backpacking.
Yeah.
Through Sumatra, Thailand, and onto Sri Lanka. And then stayed at the Shivananda ashram there, studied yoga.
Right.
But it didn't, I wanted the knowledge. I wanted some knowledge of the self.
Yeah.
The yoga was fantastic. It was great. And the satsangs were good. But I wanted to study more in depth. And when I had my hands on the Holy Gita and the beautiful commentary of Gurudev, and I want to meet this man.
Straight to the source.
Yes. And, of course, when I got up to Siddhabari, there was meant to be a camp going on.
Right.
But because of everything that was happening in the Punjab, it has shut down.
Okay.
So kindly they let me stay at the ashram and made me comfortable. And 4 or 5 days later, Gurudev, comes to the ashram, and he steps out of the car, and you just immediately knew he was not an ordinary man.
Right. Just the glow and the energy. And
the glow, the energy, the stature, the way he moved.
Yep.
So gracefully, and there was something else going on.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And it was terrifying too for me.
Right. Yeah.
As well, because I hadn't come across this at all. So his power, that he resonated.
Yeah.
It really shook me,
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't expecting that. So he came. He walked along 2 lines, so there were the ashramites on one side and then kind of the guests on the other, and there was only very few of us there. Usually that ashram would have been filled with seekers of truth, about 600.
Right.
But because there was no camp, there was probably only 50, 60 of us. And he came walking down and, greeted everyone, and I shrank, I was at the very last in the line, and, as he was coming closer and closer, my first impression was that he was like a lion and he was coming to devour me.
Right.
This ego.
Yeah.
That was my very first impression I got of Gurudev. And of course, I didn't want to let go of my ego, and I was just, what's going on kind of thing. So, but that's what always stayed with me. My first impression was he's that like a lion.
Magnetic pull and...
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then he came closer and he smiled and just went away, and then that was that. And, the ashramites got on with what they did, and I went back to my room and tried to absorb it all. And then, the scenery in Siddhabari it's surrounded by these beautiful mountains, and had snow on them, and it was the valley below with a river, a stream going through, and it was really beautiful scenery. And so I stayed on, and Gurudev stayed on, and then the next couple of days we were just kind of hanging around, and when Gurudev came out, everybody would be out, behind him or sitting around him.
Yeah.
And I would just sit quietly. And then one day, his dasa, Shivaramji, he called me, and so I came over to him, and he said, you go in, Gurudev's in there, go and sit. So I did, and I was expecting other people to be in there, but it was just Gurudev sitting there, and he was sitting in a chair similar to this with his feet up and just having a rest. So he had his eyes closed, and I remember sitting up against the wall and praying to God at that time, please, God, don't let him open his eyes.
Yeah.
Anyway, he opened his eyes and it was like, wow, I just I don't know, his energy was just all encompassing and the whole nervous system kind of shook. And anyway, he asked, where are you from and what's your name and what's your program after this, And first of all, I felt comfortable enough to ask him a question, which I have, studied a bit of Buddhism, been brought up a Catholic, and now yoga I had been into, and I wanted to know that, everything's impermanent. We all know that. But is there something that is permanent? Is God permanent? If everything else is impermanent, perhaps God is impermanent also. And he just, he leant forward and he looked straight into my eyes and he said, you have a yacht. And inside that yacht, you have a bicycle, a dog, and a green parrot in a cage, and a helmsman. And then he said, what is supporting these objects? It's the yacht, right? And then he said, what supports the yacht?
Be the water
The
that
ocean.
it's sitting in, the ocean that it's
The
sitting
ocean,
in. Yeah.
And then what's
Supporting
the
ocean.
The earth.
Yeah.
And then what supports the earth?
Space.
The space. So for everything that supported the objects in the yacht, and then the yacht itself, and then the ocean, and then the earth, there's always been something to support that.
That's right.
So for everything that is changing in this world, there has to be logically something that is changeless, that never undergoes any kind of modification or any kind of change, because that changeless substratum has to support everything that is in a constant flux of change.
Yeah.
So that made total sense to me, that there is that changeless, infinite factor behind everything.
Yes.
And it is one. And so the way Gurudev explained that, immediately I've found peace in that answer. And then he said, what's your program now? What are your plans, basically?
Yeah.
And actually I was going to work in a children's orphanage for disabled children in Dehradun.
Right.
That's how I managed to get to Siddhabari.
Yeah.
Presumably do the camp and then go on to this orphanage. But I never mentioned that. And then I said, I don't have a program. And he said, when the trains get running again to go down south, you go with Shivaram and he will take you to Bombay.
Right.
There is a Vedanta course going on. It's been going for 1 year. You go into that. You will find an exquisite teacher who will remove all your doubts. And 2 days later, I was in Mumbai. Well, heading for Mumbai.
Wow.
Didn't know what Vedanta was.
Yeah.
Nothing, Upanishads, never heard. And, that's how I ended up in Mumbai at Sandipani studying the Vedanta course.
Mm-hmm. And that I'm just trying to figure out where the faith from when Gurudev told you, to go on the train, and
I just did it.
Just doing it,
which was
where does that come
totally
from?
not me, because I never listened really to anyone. I just did what I felt I needed to do. Even going to India, I never listened to anyone.
Yeah.
I just did it.
Yeah.
And because I knew that he knew this truth, that's where I put my faith in.
Yeah.
There was something within me, just like everybody else at that time in that ashram, knew that he was immersed in this truth.
Yeah.
He was living it, and he was immersed in it, and he was it.
That's right. Yep.
And so if I had walked away and just, carried on, travelled a bit, or found, something else, it could never have been as equal to as having met our Pujya Gurudev and doing what he said to do.
Do you feel if you hadn't listened and, some way or another you would have been brought back around? And
Perhaps there would have been, definitely.
Some other intervention.
As, followed the spiritual path in some way, but it would have been different. It would have been different, and probably not as thorough and clear. Yeah.
And then having attended the course and learnt everything.
I didn't learn everything, no, but
well, having been on the course and being a student, what was that like, and how did that change your thinking to then taking the next step?
I did, in this course I did 10 months, but my visa ran out, so I had to go back.
Right.
I tried to renew it in Delhi, but they wouldn't give it extension. So, and I was devastated. But Gurudev said, "Don't worry, do the next course."
Mm-hmm.
So the next time the course came up, I did the next one.
Right.
So, they were the best years of my life. They were just wonderful, just constantly listening to it day in and day out and getting absorbed in it and living with a great Mahatma, Swami Tejomayanandaji, and also Gurudev coming in and out of the ashram because Bombay was his base.
Yeah.
And so being able to see him, and he was even teaching some of the classes when he came. So it was a tremendous experience, and
I imagine it would have been very just electric, and the energy would have just the atmosphere as well.
Pardon?
The atmosphere would have just
having that atmosphere and being surrounded by like-minded people and having saints come and go.
Yeah.
And saying a few words to us, and it was just so grateful for that and that experience. When you come out, it's totally different.
Yeah.
As-
Coming out of the course and back into the real world.
or the unreal world.
Right. Yes.
Yeah,
That's
totally.
right. Yeah.
Unreal, chaotic, crazy, mad world. You know, I remember going back to, I spent 6 months in Utakashi, Gurudev's permission, but after the course, and then went back to Melbourne.
Yep.
Of course, in those days there was no ashram in Melbourne.
That's right. Yeah.
So I had to go back to work.
Right.
And
yeah.
take study groups in Bali Vihar as well.
Yeah.
But I had to work. So
Sort of in between these two different realms, you know.
yeah, and just working was just being thrown back into
yeah.
such duality and a world that was, you know, coming out of an ashram where you're so protected.
That's right.
And then you had to deal with another kind of world that wasn't resonating with you at all.
Yeah. That almost sounds like kind of like the ashram that I'm in now, you know, the Grahastha ashram, where you attend classes and you're learning about the knowledge, and then to kind of have to navigate this world as well.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, was the decision then quite easy to then for you to enter into the brahmachari ashram?
Well, after the court, you know, we were still brahmacharis, but it was difficult to balance the two. Yeah. But then I knew, well, this is my karma.
Right.
You know, one day there will be an ashram in Melbourne. Motherji was there, so she was also guiding me. And of course, the best thing that kept me grounded and rooted in the teachings was that Gurudev was coming to Melbourne.
Right. Yeah.
And he was giving lectures and camps and he'd go to other places then, also in Australia, Sydney and Perth. So that was the lifesaver. That was the lifeguard. So, you know, would be waiting and hanging on for, you know, his next visit and things like that.
I guess it gives you something to look forward to as
Totally.
well.
Yeah.
Something to keep working towards, being inspired.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, of course, I had the study group and then the children's classes, and that would also keep me inspired. And, I had come up against some opposition with my family as well, so that caused a few glitches, but I just kept steady and main thing is, like anything in this outer world, balance is really important.
That's right.
And even for you, if you have the scriptural studies, it's something that we can always back us up.
That's right.
Or something that will always support us mentally, emotionally, intellectually, you know.
Yeah.
We have to kind of it takes some time to get ourselves rooted in that way of thinking, because we are quite extrovert characters.
That's right. Yeah.
And then to, you know, release ourselves from the clutches of those old thought patterns does take time. We just have to be patient and, you know, enjoy the journey.
Yeah, to remove all the pre-existing conditions that we've inherited and grown up with. And I think even for myself, going through these sessions with Ishanji as well, has sort of transformed my thinking, where I initially thought, you know, we have the different aspects of life. You've got your work, your family, your relationships, and then spirituality. And through this experience, just learning that spirituality is all encompassing, and actually it's through spirituality that you then have these different facets of life.
And spiritualize your life. That's it.
Yeah.
Whether you're a householder or businessman or whatever, you
That's
can
right.
spiritualize your life.
What is, just before we finish up here, what is one learning or teaching of Gurudev's that you've held very dear, and that is something that constantly reminds you on to kind of stay true to your path and your journey, and to never lose that faith? What is something that you've held dear to yourself?
Tatua masi,
Mm-hmm.
that thou art. So, he used to often say that or whisper that. When we were in Goa, he had a yagna in Goa, and Gurudev loved tennis.
Right.
Like Guruji loves cricket.
Right. Yeah.
Gurudev loved tennis.
Mm-hmm.
In those days, it was John McEnroe who was the champion. And wherever a tennis match was on, would just TV would be on. Gurudev would be there, sitting comfortably, feet up, focused on the game.
Yeah.
And would be sitting at his feet. And one lady said, Gurudev, who do you think will win? And Gurudev said, it's not about winning. It's about how you play the game.
Mm. Yeah.
So, that stayed with me. And so many things. When you've suddenly asked me that, I've, so many things that... And even for everyone around now, that there's so many of Gurudev's videos, and you can see, in those days there would be 8,000 people coming to his lectures in India.
Wow.
8 to 10,000.
Wow.
All sitting on the ground in a cricket field.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be just chocker with thousands and thousands of people. Unbelievable. It's something we can't imagine.
No.
I mean, maybe you can imagine a rock concert or something like that.
Yeah.
But everybody just sitting cross-legged on the ground, pin drop silence, just waiting for him to speak.
That really puts it into perspective when you were talking about earlier, just about when you saw him for the first time, and that presence and the energy you felt. For someone to have that presence and energy to be able to speak in front of, to draw that many people, that's very, very powerful.
It's so rare.
Yeah.
And you just wouldn't get it these days.
No.
Even with a concert, it wouldn't be there. Because everything's, at your fingertips. But, people would travel for hundreds of miles to come and see him and listen to him.
I really appreciate you just sharing that with me as well. That's just helped me, again, to just really paint a picture in my mind about just how beautiful and true the knowledge is, and how connected to the source Gurudev is and was, and that the teachings are so available to us, and to be able to even just read the text that he's written, and to know that he is this powerful lion.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's
Yes, he was a mighty power. He still is, because you can see what's happening in the mission now.
Yeah.
And it was all because he had planned it all out as well, you know. So how the mission has grown and developed, and so many things are happening, so many wonderful things are happening all over the world.
That's right. Yeah.
With Chinmaya Mission, and he is the substratum for that.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So we can never forget that, and his glory and his greatness, and he was just indescribable.
Oh,
You couldn't put really. I've tried to give us some sort of picture, but I just feel so fortunate to have been in his presence, but even so, his body is not here now.
Yeah.
He definitely is.
That's right.
You know, for you, for your children, he's eternal. So, yeah.
Thank you very much, Amma, for just sharing your journey and your learnings, sharing stories with yourself and Gurudev as well. We really appreciate your time and your presence here.
Thank you
today.
Thank you for having me, Akash, and thank you to all your listeners out there. And just keep moving, keep anchored, get yourself anchored in the spiritual path, because truly there is nothing else. There is nothing else. Everything else is ephemeral. It'll come, it'll go, but you could never hang on to it.
Thank you very much, Amma.
So, Hari Om, Hari Om.
Hari Om.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Thinking is Free, proudly brought to you by Chinmaya Mission New Zealand. For more information on events, courses, Seva projects and study groups, please visit chinmaya.org.nz. Hari Om.